Welcome, everyone, to the Out of Ashan podcast. This is your host, June.
And I'm Cole.
And we have been friends for a very long time, and we're super excited to now be able to communicate and connect with you via podcast. We've thought of a lot of different ways to do it. We were like, yo, should we do seminars? Should we teach? Should we
go the traditional route? Hey, this is the new medium, the new platform, the one that's easily accessible. So why not do the podcast?
And the cheapest.
Hey, that's true.
Yeah, and it reaches all over the world. So actually, we plan to do all of those things with our great background in education. We've been educating people. I mean, him and I used to always, growing up in the church together, we would go travel to Ocean City and Rehoboth Beach and
Augsburg.
Everywhere. All throughout the Maryland, D.C. area. We were in a band together. He was the drummer. You know what I'm saying? Closest one, I think, to Dre Dog. Shout out to Bugs.
JYB.
And JYB, who influenced us. And from that, I went into the music business and have done some really cool things through music and reached out to a lot of young people. So seeing the impact it's had on the culture, which I hope to, I look forward to explaining a lot more of that and seeing how the hand of God moves through everything. And then your experience as an educator.
Yeah, throughout education, knowledge is power, and as the scripture says that without knowledge your people perish. So that is one of the foundational pieces that we want to focus on as well, because how can we move, how can we grow, how can we better ourselves without equipping ourselves with the knowledge and the information necessary to do that? So that's one of the biggest things for us. And even growing up, we've been educating since a very young age. I'm talking Sunday school. Yeah. You're talking vacation Bible school. You're talking like internships. We've been doing it all for a long time, but it hadn't been formalized.
And we've been fortunate too, because it's like we have a good quorum. Like for us, for instance, we've been friends since we were fifth grade. Yeah. And now we're just hitting 40, and this is like our prime, and we figured, okay, what do we do now? Because from our 30s to our 40s, we were like I said earlier, was in education. I was working in the nonprofit sector, so I had an opportunity to work throughout Africa. That's what this Ashan is about. The podcast Ashan finds itself not only deeply rooted spiritually, but culturally. And being African, our parents being from Ghana, or being from Africa, and me traveling throughout Africa, us being amongst Africans. We grew up in a church in a setting where there was a ton of Africans.
Probably 100% African.
Yes, pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, from Liberia to, they'll have the man come up front to the church and say, there's what's going on in
Uganda, Sierra Leone,
Liberia.
Yeah. People are yelling and crying, and we like kids like, yo, can we go play basketball? We going to the go-go.
Right.
And even going to the go-go. Go-go music, shout out to DC and the whole DC scene. That was really a powerful testament to, Africa, because it's the only African-American quote-unquote music. Because you got
from the roof.
You got Congos. So our uncle be like, when that is African music. We're like, whatever. But it was really symbolic and powerful that it was in America, but yet it was African based, and they were using a lot of covers from rap music, which rap came from what? Reggae. And reggae has all of its melody. We was listening to Bob Marley all day. It felt like we was back in church. So you start to see our culture. When you don't have culture and you don't have an identity, you're always going to be looking. And I think that's more of the problem, is we have no identity. So once again, this podcast is about trying to rediscover. It's a journey, rediscover our identity through our spirituality and through our understanding of self and reliance on the Most High, and getting back to God, getting back to that part of us that's God, which is the being.
The being part, right?
The being.
And understanding God, you'll also understand each other, because that's a part of the problem in our existence in humanity. We don't commune, we don't consult, we don't console. Like the whole idea of sharing empathy that's all gone out the door. Because you hear these terms like where individualism is about me. Do you. Like, it's all fine and great, but you can't survive without other people.
It's impossible.
So how can you coexist? Why is it that we look the same, we can talk the same, could be from the same place, but we have dividing factors. We have things that separate us, and like people used to say all along is the devil's in the detail. So reading between the lines and really looking deeper into beyond what you see on the surface level, and that's another aspect of what this podcast we want to use to uncover, because we want to have those deeper conversations so that we know the why.
Yeah.
And not just what it is, but we understand the why, and from all perspectives, so that gives you a better understanding of how you can grasp that information.
And the cool thing, you know, as we begin to get into this podcast and talk about the power of words, you know, the word is really important. And, you know, and I think if we go back to the scripture, because, you know, it's like, oh, this is a religious podcast. This is not a religious podcast. This is a spiritual journey. This is a natural, because anything that is real, anything that's God driven will also be found in everyday life. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've noticed is like all the way from spirit or from thought process or from idea, intellect, you know, emotion, that's the spirit world. You know, if you're going to use the scriptures, the most important thing that I realized, you know, in studying, because, you know, we went to school and got our masters in divinity, masters in education. You even went to seminary as well, in Bob Jones' world. So we want to come to the Midwest. You know, I got mine from Springfield, Missouri.
Over there,
you know,
Greenville, South Carolina. Yes. Shout out to Dr. Bob Jones III. That was an interesting experience there too. And see that also plays in a part of why this podcast is so unique, because we're from Africa, parents are from Africa, living in the DC area, experiencing this culture, leaving and going to the Midwest, going to uncharted territories, Missouri, Greenville, South Carolina. It can't get any more conservative and white power than that. And then on top of that, then you move
the Trump world.
Then you move to California.
Yeah.
I moved to Texas. I lived in Arizona. And that tells you a little bit about who we are, that we're just open at all times to explore, to meet new people, to new endeavors, new opportunities, because that's just something that's been in our being.
From the jump, you know, we'll get up, we'll be, you know, 17 years old, you get your Uncle Bucket.
The past was incredible. Man, we used to drive through Potomac, pick up some chicks, we used to do all kind of stuff. You know, teenagers how we do. We just moving around, doing what we do.
And then be like, yo, you trying to go to Atlanta? Sonny Black.
Pack up and go.
Gone. They be like, yo, where'd y'all go? Don't even worry about it.
That's what we used to do. Just pick up and go. I mean, I remember we didn't even. Where did we get money from?
Money was never a factor. To this day, money's
not a factor. The things we've done, we've been all over the world. We've traveled. We've helped tons of people. We're doing some amazing projects that we look forward to sharing in the future and in future podcasts that we're doing, and the impact that we're having. So we want to teach people that it's not about always having all the money, because you're like, oh, we got to stack our bread, we got to do this, we got to do that. Yes, to a degree.
Right.
Everything
for what purpose?
Everything is context, and that's what we need to learn. And a lot of that we can't learn is because we don't have structure. Mm-hmm. We lost a lot of our structure, whether it be family structure, whether it be the male influence, whether it be mom influence. It's so mixed up with the bottom line, and that's a part of a society that we are in that is prehistoric and that is outdated. Mm-hmm. Nature teaches us that you need everything, or you need elements, you need each other.
Mm-hmm. You need water. You need air. You can't survive. Did something go out?
And we back on. It's recording. You know what I'm saying? We're getting a little bit of this technical difficulty, but we still here and we still popping and we on. So I think it's important for us to realize that we need each other in order to survive. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to do it alone.
It's imperative, yeah.
You got to study history. We got to really look at it. And people are like, oh, history's in the past. It doesn't matter where I'm from. Da-da-da. No, it does matter. Because how you going to know where you're going if you don't know where you came from? It's just like watching, you know, say Game of Thrones, for all my Game of Thrones people, or whatever TV show you like. And if it's in 5, 6, 8 seasons and you come in on the 7th season and thinking you know what's going on, you don't know. No matter what you say, if it's a good story and it's really progressive, if it's one of those shows where it doesn't matter, like it's the same episode every time, which seems to be life right now for most people, is just the same chapter you keep reading. Is that's just me. That's just the way I am. No, it's not just the way you are.
That's it.
You are wired based on a lot of different factors. For instance, right now I'm speaking English, right? My parents is from Ghana. My parents is African.
Speaking tree.
but we speak English right now. This is somebody else's language. Shout out to English, but yeah, that's not my vibration.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If you're from, Ecuador or wherever you're from, that's native language.
Mm-hmm.
But you speak in Spanish.
That's it.
And Spanish was what? Because of the settlements and the conquistadors and all that happened. So if you don't understand your history and know where you're coming from, you're going to always be lost. So it's really important for us to begin to understand who we are, because then your value comes. And that's been the beautiful thing for me. I'm first generation, and, unfortunately, but fortunately, my parents passed away early on in my life, 6 months apart. So I was lost. And then I moved to California, like you said. And I felt like, I've been a nomad all this time, but I learned, first of all, that God is real. And he was the one who was guiding me and protecting me, even through situations that seemed to be bad. You read in the book of Genesis when Joseph, when he went into Egypt, he was sold into Egypt by his brothers.
Flesh and blood.
Your own brothers. It's always your brothers.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Martin Luther King to Malcolm X to whoever, to Jesus Christ. Shout out to, I was watching, I think it was The Breakfast Club, and Dame Dash was on there, and that thing always stood out to me when he was like, what do you get when you have
12
disciples and you feeding and helping them? Hung on the cross.
On the cross. That's what you go get. That's it. Somebody has to be the sacrificial lamb, right? And that's what no one wants to be. Right. And that's oftentimes why movements and things never begin. Because when people begin to weigh the cost, they're like, nah, I'm good. Let somebody else do it. And then they'll just ride on their coattails.
Right. And race has never been necessarily an issue, but it does matter. Just like, you have different types of animals. You have lions, you have tigers, you have pumas, you got cheetahs. Those are all cats, but they have different functions. And the beauty is in our diversity. Like in Africa, there's so many ethnic groups. When I was traveling throughout Africa and doing the work I was doing for that time period, it was like, wow, look at all the different countries and different ethnic groups but yet it's still a same type of people. And I'm sure you can find that in Asia and anywhere else. Right. So like being in Missouri, I remember I went to Branson. Shout out to Branson. That's like the Vegas of the Midwest.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
And I went to go see the Ball Knobbers.
Lambert's. If you ever been to Branson, go to Lambert's. Throw the roll.
I think we need to get them as a sponsor. You feel me?
Call Lambert's.
We're going to get back to Missouri. Evangel University, shout out. That's where I got my first degree from. And I remember my good friend at the time, we went to see the Ball Knobbers. There's like 4,000 people there. And he was like, yo, do you notice that you're the only black person here? And I was like, it never even crossed my mind. Mm-hmm. Now, a part of that could be, was that you, because you was Uncle Tom? That's a percentage of that, possibly.
But you weren't aware of it.
Growing up, we had white people in our church.
We were just talking about music, like Michael W. Smith. These are like contemporary artists. These are all white folks. So in our world, even growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, it was diverse. So we saw everybody. Everybody, mom and dad were there. It was a different time. So for us, even going to Frostburg, going to different places, it didn't occur to me like going to Bob Jones. I was like, even in Bob Jones in the classroom, those grad classes, might have been 2 of us.
Right.
But you didn't notice it unless someone said something about it. Like you didn't notice. Well, let me say that. Me personally, I wasn't aware that I was the only guy. Because in my perception, it wasn't on my radar to look at that.
Right. But then as we started getting more involved in society, you were going to school, you started seeing the injustice and inequalities and certain things. It's kind of like Moses. Moses what? What did Moses do? Moses was an Egyptian. I mean, he was a Hebrew, but living in Egypt, and he was a prince. He was like the guy. And then he realized he started walking around, he's seeing in the mud pits and he's seeing them struggling and he looking good, but he's like, hold on.
Felt that connection. Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
What's going on here?
I remember I have on my Facebook, 8 years ago, me going through the tour in Benin of it says God, what was the name of that place? It was basically the route of the slaves and what they went through and how they enslaved, how the African released the other Africans, and it was business at first, and then it just got out of hand basically, and then that's how we got this whole transatlantic slave trade and those kind of things. But what you have to realize is that slavery is been going on all over the world. It wasn't just black people that were being enslaved. This was happening to Europeans. Talk to the Irish. There was people who've been enslaved a lot. However, the effects of slavery has hit us and has been affecting us to this time. We're still dealing with slavery, the effects of slavery, which is basically post-traumatic slave. We're dealing with trauma. Is that a wrap? Oh, okay. Not a wrap. My daughter's back here. She's my what do you call them people?
Executive producer.
Yeah. Back here producing. We got our girls back here. We got one of our girls who's giving us, when we're off and when things are not going right. And we got one taking pictures and we got one who's holding the camera. And it's a family business. We love our kids. We love seeing them grow and them being in this atmosphere and seeing the importance of dads. So shout out to the dads. Dads at times have gotten such a bad rap, but fathers are a part of civilization. It's about that's the role we play. It's almost like, once again, everyone has their role, and I'm not here to fight the feminist movement and all these different things that we have. We could talk about that later. But just in pure root, we're going to root. Pure root is just like oranges. You got apples, you got pineapples, you got all types of fruit, and pineapples can't tell oranges we don't want vitamin C anymore. What do you mean?
You need that to survive.
That's why I'm here. No one can tell me to go anywhere because none of you made me. None of you brought me here.
That's so true.
So y'all gonna try to marginalize me.
Mendici. Oh, shout out to Kanye.
And we got great spiritual connections.
Speaking of Kanye, I got into music because of Kanye. Jesus Walks. I was in seminary. He said Jesus Walks. I'm like, yo, Jesus Walks? Y'all don't feel the anointing on that? Nah, but he just said the B word on the next song and da-da-da-da.
Really?
Didn't Paul? Paul didn't know what he was doing, and Barnabas helped him, didn't he? I couldn't understand it.
Even just you mentioning that talks about the power of language. Because I don't know if you recall when early in Sunday school, we used to have uncles who used to come from Germany, teaching the classes, and they will come in the middle of the Sunday school. They would be like, effing, oh, shit, all this, just using our language. And we were like, he cussed. But, he cussed. And he's actually teaching us the Bible. But because they come from a different culture in Germany, that's everyday dialect. He was looking at us like, what? What are you talking about? Because we're in a new norm. He was a new normal. So what was normal there is not normal here.
Right. And another thing, just to add that point, shout out to James K. P&M. He was, to me, in my opinion, one of the greatest pastors that I ever had in my life. Now, let me give you a context. We're young kids. This is like the 90s. And he's teaching us about her breast shall satisfy thee at all time. All the boys is like, yeah, we like that verse. Where's that verse at? And then he played Full Metal Jacket in church.
You are nothing but unorganized, graphic pieces of amphibian shit.
And allowed us to watch us to teach us how the world really is.
Language, we're talking... How old were we? At least middle school.
Was 12, 13, just going through puberty. The testosterone is up.
If you would have saw the other teachers, the ladies walking around here, like, what are they playing? Because my dad, he used to always tell us, he's like, this right here is not real life. So he's always referred that back. He said, nah, you guys need to get a lesson on real life. A lot of his friends and people he associates with my dad was a pastor, but he associated with everybody. Yeah. He had so many people come through our house living at our house at times that you would think these are like missionaries. Nope. These people were actually drunkards. My uncle, you got drunks, womanizers, you name it. They were living right there. And that was his whole mantra. So him playing Full Metal Jacket in church for us, we used to watch it at home.
But yeah, your dad was really impactful because he taught us things that to this day, I'm 40 years old and I still remember. Her breast shall satisfy thee at all times. Full Metal Jacket. And to hear those words coming out of those people's mouth and how depression, it was what? He was speaking words to him. You ain't nothing. You ain't gonna never be nothing. You stupid.
Breaking him down.
Breaking him down till he lost control. And we see that happening right now. I do Lyft from time to shout out to Lyft and Uber. We drive around so many people throughout Los Angeles from all over the world and being able to connect with them and knowing the power of words and the power of connection. Even with your business and picking up diplomats and
people from all over, all walks of life,
and being able to connect. So it's like, it's not a racial thing because like you said, I was in Springfield, Missouri. I was in, you was in
South Carolina. Texas, Arizona.
Africa. We've been to Nigeria. Shout out to Nigeria. Now, my name is Omuwale. Our son has come home. That's what I used, because I was working for a nonprofit organization, the Foursquare Foundation, which is really cool. So shout out to the Foursquare Foundation and giving me the opportunity to build something from the ground up and being able to put work throughout 40 nations. 40 nations. So for those who don't know geography, Africa is a continent and there are 54
Country.
depending on who you talk to, some think 55, but 54 countries in Africa of different ethnic groups and people, and the land and the people are rich.
Language diversity.
And there's a lot of people in Africa and Africans even throughout America.
With different shades, believe it or not. Remember growing up when Calvary Baptist Choir came from Ghana? I mean, you'd have thought it was the United Nations in that choir, because in our minds,
And that was just primarily Ghana. That was just one country.
Just one country. In our minds, you think Africa, African country, all black people.
Yeah.
But it was just people, I mean, different shades of black there or brown.
All
We're like, what?
Diversity, that's the power. The power is in diversity. You know, we kind of mimic that or model that in America. But I think a part of the problem we're having here in the United States is that it's a young nation, right? America's what, 250 years old? It's a young nation. So some of the ideals and the perspectives that they've operated from, or we've been operating from for such a long time, needs an upgrade. We need to reevaluate if we're going to survive and become the great nation that this country has the potential to be with all this diversity. You know, we look back to some of those things that have happened through slavery, and then, you know, people wanting reparations, or what happened to the natives or the Native Americans, or different people groups, you know, the Chinese or the Mexicans, or what. You can go through every people group and see times of affliction and time of growth. And I feel like this is a great opportunity for us to really have a new conversation and look from an opportunistic standpoint, an optimistic standpoint of how we can approach. And it starts with in. And one of the great things I've learned, you know, working in hip hop and hearing a lot of the leaders and the people who are leading the culture today is self-awareness and self-love. Self-love is really, really important. Now, there's a fine line between self-love and
Narcissism.
Say, I am strong.
I am strong.
Say, I am smart.
I am smart.
Mirror, mirror on the wall. I ain't too short, I ain't too tall. Damn if I don't have it all.
everything is balanced.
Balanced, all right.
You can't be too overly this or too overly that. Like you said, everybody want to be somebody else, right? Somebody wants long hair. Somebody wants to be darker. Someone wants to be lighter. Everybody who's trying to be light, the other ones who are light are trying to be dark. This one is fat. Oh, I don't got this, so I need to get this. So they're going to put this in, and I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get this work done, and I'm going to do this. So what is the internal dialogue that's causing that? And you can realize where people are based on the outward appearance of what's going on in their mind a lot of times. So when you look on the outside, now obviously that's, don't judge me.
Just an opinion.
Yeah, and it's just an observation.
There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong having an opinion.
If I don't agree with you, I don't agree with you.
I don't have to.
That's a part of emotional intelligence we've been talking about. Like, we need to grow emotionally and not feel like we have to do it the way everyone else does it, or the way someone else said I need to do it, or, well, you're not being, what's the word they use all the time? What's the political, all these political, I call these incantations. In Jamaica, they call it obia. It's witchcraft. Where it's always a control. You gotta control somebody. Why do you have to, why can't I just think what I think and still be okay with you? Like, hey, me and Cole, we agree on a lot of things, but we may not agree on certain things, and it's like, okay.
That's maturity, you know? He like the Denver Broncos growing up. Like, I'm not a John Elway fan. The Eagles were the team to beat, bro.
He want to go into sports. I mean, shout out to Randall Cunningham.
The man,
If
best
Randall
QB
is
of all time, right?
And I picked John Elway because when I was in school in 6th grade, when Washington Redskins, it was Doug Williams, the first, I think not the only, but he was the first black quarterback to win the Super Bowl.
I think he was the first. I think he might. Is he the only?
Didn't McNabb or somebody?
McNabb.
I got to do my. This is not a sports show, but we just tapping into it, so I don't remember.
All the way from Seattle.
Oh yeah, Russell. So Doug was the first. 42-10. Everyone in my house, I always want to go contrary, like or go against the grain. So they were like, we Redskins fans. I was like, eh. And then I remember we threw a touchdown.
First
touchdown. It was like the second play or something. I was going. I can even feel it right now in my bones how happy I was. And then the whooping came, and it was 42-10. Oh, they beat us so bad. And John Elway lost 4 Super Bowls, but then he won 2 in a row.
Yeah.
And he done a great job over there.
Hall of Fame. So we can't hate on John Elway. It was good. It was a good run. Then he liked the Detroit Pistons, the bad boy Pistons. I was the Lakers fan. Magic was my favorite basketball player.
But I'm a Laker fan now because I'm a LeBron fan. I think it's different now because it's not. I think they're going back to that because you see what happened with Golden State. You stick with a team, you stick with people, you learn chemistry. Once again, you have to work with one another. You see it in sports. We could take it to a lot of different.
Everything.
You need sports. You need unity. You need time. We need time to get to know each other. We have to undo a lot of these social norms and ideals that have kept us from being more than what we are. There's so much division, and the bigger task in my mind is getting unification amongst us as a people.
And that task is so great because one of the questions we need to get answered, and we hope with the dialogue amongst ourselves and whatever guest in our community as a whole is, as a people, understanding you, that's a task. That's a lifelong mission.
Right.
Because you're constantly growing. You're constantly getting to know who you are and how you fit in.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, a lot of the things, when you look at slavery worldwide, this is a unique situation where the people who are oppressed are still living in that same land, and their offspring are continuing to live in the same land. So it's not like the Holocaust or the Jews, how they were being persecuted at one place and then moved and outsourced to a different location where they got a fresh start.
Yeah.
You're still entrenched on the same soil and the same land that it took place on, and nothing has changed. There have been amendments here and there, but it hasn't been a complete overhaul.
Right.
So because of that, it seems like you'll never come to that place where it'll be just complete freedom, because it's always been there.
Right.
And the generations are going. It's just like things are just time is moving along, but the undercurrent is still the same.
Which goes back to, once again, like you said, perception.
Mm-hmm.
Perception is everything, because all of us look at the world a certain way. For instance, those who have, say, like insecurities, and you may look at somebody and you think they're looking at you a certain way, or they think a certain way, so you assume.
That's what they're looking at.
And then your assumption becomes a reality to you. Doesn't even mean you haven't even asked him. I remember this one dude was like, what I'm saying? The first time I saw him, I was like, all right, I'm gonna let that slide. And then he did it again. I was like, yo, I was like, yo, so did you have a conversation with him? He was like, nah. I was like, so how do you know he was even thinking that? How did you come to that conclusion? It was all in his mind.
That's what I thought.
So perception is everything, and perception deals with what? Words. You go to Genesis chapter 1. What does it say? In the beginning, God first. That's the first thing. So I think it's really important for us to realize right now, everyone's heart is beating, right? Your heart is beating right now. You have no control of your heart.
Try to make your heart stop. Stop it.
Stop your heart right now.
Stop it. Can you do it?
What's going to happen 3 minutes from now? You really don't know. You can literally, your heart can stop beating right now. It's literally off the energy. Whoever's in control of that. Let's go back. Let's go even further. The sun. Can any of y'all touch the sun? Has anybody touched the sun? They say they went to Mars. I'm not even going to get into that yet. But
and when the sun.
The sun, no one can touch the sun. It goes up and it comes. We can manipulate all kind of things. We can make fake food. We can do all these things, but no one can touch the sun. And the sun gives life to everything on the earth. And the sun finds itself in my skin. How is that bad? How is that negative? Self-love. Love yourself. Everybody out in Swaziland, in Lesotho, in Xhosa, in South Africa, the first language, love yourself. In Uganda, in Ghana, in Paraguay, in Argentina, in Bolivia, Peru, in Chicago, in DC, Mexico,
everywhere,
in Jamaica, Yard,
Baltimore,
Cuba,
the NY. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yugoslavia,
we're all over.
Russia,
everywhere, China.
Japan. all over the globe. Love yourself, and you are important. You bring so we can break it down like, say the Africans are, a certain type of fruit, and then you got we are all a diverse makeup of what? The beginning, God. God created you.
Everybody.
That's the substratum to all things, and that's what we got. Everything else is illusions. God created you, and then he said let there. He said, word. He said, let there be light, and there was light. So whatever you say will manifest, no matter whether you believe it or not. Because whatever you believe in your subconscious, whatever, we're not going to get into the metaphysicals and all those different terminologies and sciences to try to control. It's just what it is. Your word produces fruit. If you keep going to somebody and say, yo, you stupid, you dumb, you ain't gonna never be nothing anyway, you ain't nothing, you're an idiot.
You stupid.
No, not.
What's 9 plus 10?
21.
Or y'all ain't gonna never make it. We always broke. We always struggling.
That's it.
We ain't never got nothing. We ain't gonna never make it. What if you start changing the dialogue and changing your perception and saying, we've been out the game, but we gonna get back up?
The thing about the dichotomy between the two, that person or the word you throw out there, they could take it and use it and use that to their demise, or they'll take that same word and say, I'm going to make it my mission to work against the thing you say. So regardless, that word has life. Depending on its outcome, it has life.
For example, in the hip hop community, thank you, Alec Cole, for sharing that. You have what? The word, the N word, started from the ER to the A, blah, blah, blah. It was now what? A term of endearment, and now everybody uses it. Now, we can argue whether that's
good. Right.
That's a whole nother conversation, and I'm not getting into that. You have enough people who talk about that, but you get my point. The word, and that's what it means to be made in the image of the Most High, to be made in the image of the unseen God who made all things. Right now, the earth is in the middle, is suspended in space.
Just up there.
Just there.
And science is trying to make sense of what exists now. We don't know what life is out there because we haven't been there. We can see it with our telescopes, can't get close, but we don't know what's there. You don't know what's there.
Because we're not supposed to be in that atmosphere. That's why it's space. There's no gravity. He gave you gravity here because this is where you belong. Now, I'm not saying we can't explore, we can't go blah, 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 because we're already doing that. But my point is, what naturally? We got to go back to nature, natural, because we fish out of water right now. We're not tapping into what is there, and thus why the earth is responding. I have a theory. Some would say it's a theory. I believe it's a spiritual principle. If we as individuals become better and love ourselves, even as a collective, it will manifest in the earth itself. The earth is responding not only to because we won't give it rest. We're always pulling on it, creating cars, creating this, doing this, and it's all based off of economics, which is okay. Economics is good. Make money, get money, all that good stuff. But if that's the only metric, that is an antiquated thought process. Because let me ask you a question. If you're making all this money and we ain't got the earth no more, and we, carbon and carbon footprints and all these different things are all over the place, where are you going to spend the money?
You better create your own planet and go somewhere else.
So we got to use logic again. We have to get back to the basics. And that's what Africa taught me when I had to go to Sudan in the middle of the bush. In the middle of the bush where they were just living in huts and living off the earth. We'd be like, oh, they're not advanced. We don't got no technology. They ain't got no internet. They ain't got Snapchat. They ain't got this. Listen.
They're living a better fulfilled life.
My grandma was in a village and she lived to 108. And her sisters lived at 112. His grandma's still alive.
She's still alive. She close to 90. Stronger than you 30 and 40-year-olds hustling, busting here.
No cancers, none of that stuff. So the real question is, who's the third world and who's the developing world? It's all perspective, right? Because the developing world, in our mind, what we've been told is, you got cars, you got industrialism, you got jobs. I'm a lawyer, I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm got .com this, and I'm a part of this, and da-da-da. But you tired, your kids is all over the place. You don't even know how to relate to them anymore. I used to pick them up. I go way in the hills in California, deep up in the top of the hills, and come down, and they're like, oh, my kid just got off rehab.
That's true.
Oh, my wife is getting on my nerves, or my husband is a jerk, or whatever it may be. It's like, that's advancement? That's what we're looking for? That's what we call great?
We have a very limited view on life.
But you go to Africa and the kids don't got nothing, and they
and they laugh.
Having a good time.
You talk about joy, because even when we talk about our childhood, us being able to pick up, go here and there, that was a true essence of freedom. Like, there was no liabilities, nothing kept you down. Figure life out, figure some things out. Then we'll reevaluate this whole college thing. We were saying this back in 1995, 96. Today, that's the norm. If you look at President Obama's daughters, even people I've dealt with in high school, they call it a gap year now. Now, students aren't going directly. They're traveling, they're exploring, they're getting to do different things before they make that jump. We were talking about that in 95, 96. And somebody said what to us? Foolish faith.
Yeah.
A PhD at the, well, I'm not even going to highlight the school. But they said it was foolish faith because we weren't thinking about doing the traditional route of just going. But in our minds, like, if we don't know what we want to do, why are we rushing this thing? We just turned 18 years of age. Why are you forcing us to go into this system to pay for it?
Right.
When we don't have a clear path of what it is we're trying to accomplish.
And being first generation is like our parents came from a different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
My mom and dad came from the Kwame Nkrumah era, which is like in the 60s and 70s, from Ghana, which is a totally different nation, then moving to America, right?
Right.
And then you come into another society, you're trying to assimilate, you're trying to connect, and most of the older people, like you said the other day, was like, if someone just says, hey, don't do this, why not? You're going to go and do it. But if you teach them, like, the reason why you don't want to do this is A, B, C, and D. And that's what I've tried to do with my daughter and my kids. And this is a tip for parenting, is like, you have to explain to your kids why they shouldn't do certain things. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, the whole idea about sexuality and so forth and so on. It's like, society's just tapping on the sensationalism part of it, how it feels. Of course it feels great. We understand that. But there's more factors to it than just that. There's other metrics, just like with money. There's other metrics to things. And we have to, like with money, you have to think about the environment, think about other things and say, okay, this is a good decision. This is why we should do this. This is why we shouldn't do this, or why we should do that.
And comparing the temporary to the long term. Because there's always a temporary value, and there's also a long-term benefit to the different actions. Because every action, there's a reaction. But once again, the disconnect is not parents not explaining, taking the time for people to understand what it is you're trying to convey.
Right. And I think it's really important that we begin to delve or dive into these concerns, these issues. And we really hope that this podcast has set an expectation of where we're moving and how we're trying to address certain things. And we want to have a conversation, so we're not trying to tell you this is the way it should be, but we want to give you another perspective, another idea, another way to look at things, and hopefully it will spark interest and spark inspiration for you to find out for yourself how to delve into what it is that's going to make me connect and thrive in this life. Why am I here right now? At this time in 2020 or 2019, why am I here? What did I do? Where do I go from here? Because you could have been born in 1922. You could have been born in 1784. You were born now.
Why are you here?
So you are important to the process. You are here for a reason. God said, I want you here right now. So with that being said, the word is everything. Watch what you say to one another, how you relate to one another, how you relate to yourself. Because as you love yourself, then you can love your neighbor.
Welcome back, family, and thanks for tuning in to our Out of Ashan podcast. For more information, please visit us on the web at www.outofashan.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Next time.